Hey, we're there. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fan Fuel Motorsports, the podcast where fans fuel talk about motorsports. Tonight, we are going to delve into the unknown. Go grab some tinfoil. Go make yourself a hat. Because a little later, we're going to dive in to the third volume of What Ifs in Racing. Going to get a little multidimensional. But first, we're going to start off with some woke or joke. I'm the interim host this week. Alex is actually at work again. Sad. So my name is Colton Cranmore. I'm joined by Nathan Ball. Oh, wrong side.
Yeah, doesn't matter what side I'm on.
Nate, what have you been up to this week?
Huh?
What have you been up to this week?
Oh, man. What have I been up to this week? Not much. I drove home today, so I'll be here for a couple months, and then I don't know. I'm just here. There's not much going on, so.
I don't have a big, long intro like Alex normally does. I feel
right. I don't have one either.
Dead space. Yeah.
I don't have anything. I don't do much interesting things.
Yeah. Neither do I. I guess screw it. Let's just get right into woke or joke. Alex did send us a few topics here that he wanted us to hit on, and that definitely seem interesting. So first one, Nate, are you woke or joke on fans on social praising the 550 being gone forever?
I'm a joke because you know that they're going to do 550 next year. You know that their aim is to recreate the same thing. We know what they want. They want wide open racing. They want pack racing. There's no point in celebrating it being gone because chances are you're probably going to get something similar next year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, NASCAR has come out and said this is the direction that they want to go in. So there's no point in me being excited that the 550 package is gone because we're just going to have the little brother of the 550 next year. And we're going to have it at more tracks, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm hoping they don't put it like Darlington or something because that would.
Yeah, pack racing.
Track.
What about Dale Jr. saying that the next gen is the best stock car he's ever driven? Did you see that from the test of Bowman Gray?
I think it depends on what he means by best. I mean, I would assume the best meant not in terms of most fun, but maybe it turns the best in the slow corner because it's a road course car. So I would assume it probably turns a little bit better based on what everyone says. And I would think maybe he's just complimenting how it gets around the corner or what it does rather than, hey, this is going to be the best race car ever. It's going to be the most entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I definitely think Junior comes from a more of a driver's standpoint than an entertainment standpoint. He's one on the broadcast to talk about how the car drives, what he likes in a race car, what he doesn't like in a race car, and what the drivers feel. So if he's saying good things about it, that makes me a little bit more optimistic about the next gen. But I'm still super hesitant on it, just from the info that I've heard from a lot of the other drivers at tests from Daytona, etc. A lot of people who were there at the tests kind of let out a little bit of rumors.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still 50-50 on it. I don't want to get my hopes up.
Yeah, same boat here. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm necessarily woke or if I'm joking on that. I'm kind of on the fence.
I'm leaning 60-40 joke. Just based on the entertainment.
I like it. Start giving percentages. Sorry, I'm trying to read some notes here. NASCAR plays second fiddle to the USGP. Did you watch the USGP first off?
Yeah, I actually had a thing going on where in my apartment I had a computer over here, had my TV behind me, and I was in an office chair. So every time I wanted to see a race, I could just turn back and forth. And being completely honest, most of the Cup race at Kansas wasn't super eventful other than everyone's cutting tires and all that kind of stuff. So I spent most of my time looking at my computer until the race was over, and then I just put the Cup race back.
So you woke or joke on NASCAR being the second fiddle?
I love NASCAR. I don't want them to fail, but at the same time, I think I'm woke because it's almost like they needed that to happen. It's never, people are saying, "Oh, NASCAR still won," but you look at 10 years ago when F1 was on speed. I don't think anyone would have thought that an F1 race could get half as many viewers as a Cup race. 10 years ago, it was probably NASCAR would maybe 8 or 9 times F1, and now they're only down to double. So it's you can't look at the numbers, but you have to look at what's happening because, we're going down and one's going up.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm completely woke on it. I think this is the kick in the ass that NASCAR kind of needs to
Mhm.
say, hey, kind of get your stuff together. This is where the viewers are heading. And also, it kind of attests as to how much more popular racing in America is getting. I don't know necessarily that a lot of former NASCAR fans were jumping over to F1 because I don't really see that correlation there. But I think it's just a lot of people in the country turning on to racing. I've said it for a little over a year now on Twitter that I don't think racing's dead. I actually think it's growing. I just think that fans are picking out what they like best. They're not just having one form of
Yeah.
motorsport forced down their throat.
Yeah, exactly. I think people that are into racing, they might not like NASCAR, but they do like racing.
Right. Exactly. I think of a lot of dirt fans out there that now have the
Yeah.
opportunity to do more than just go to the track. That's an hour and a
Mhm.
half away from them. They can, dirt vision, this, that. Formula One gained a huge following with Drive to Survive. However, Hollywood that may be, it's still sparked a lot of interest.
I would agree. I think, like, I'm not like a huge Drive to Survive guy. I get it because I was kind of there before that happened, but I do think it's good because you got to get people from somewhere.
Yeah. So Denny Hamlin said that NASCAR needs to be more like F1. Did you hear the quote? You're a big Denny fan.
Yeah, I heard the quote. I don't remember everything he said, but I do want to say that I think it was entertainment based. Like, we need to have stuff at the track for the people outside of the racing too. Like, when there's no practice or whatever, you have to give them a reason to go there. And like, I think if it's a 1 day show for NASCAR, there is no reason to go there without, entertainment, say like infield stuff. I don't see why I would go to a 1 day show anymore. I think
Yeah.
if you're going to do that, you have to give people the opportunity to experience other stuff than just, we're going to come here, watch nothing, and then watch a race and then go home.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think they either need to bring more stuff back, like in the midways and in the infield for fans to do. I get they went away with it with COVID, but they need to start bringing some of that stuff back, that interactive stuff, or they need to just lower ticket prices, which we know they're probably not going to do that. But why would I spend? I mean, we spent about $2,000 on our trip to the Vegas race, and we didn't do anything other than sit in the bleachers and wait for the race to start. And then
Mm-hmm.
as soon as the race was done, we walked out to our car and left. I would
Yeah,
have
it's
loved
not.
to have had other stuff to watch. I mean, they had, show cars sitting out there, but I mean, if you've seen a show
Yeah.
car in the last 2 years, you've seen a show car.
Right. Like, there's got to be something to see. Like, there's no attractions.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I was a little disappointed that I spent that much money. It would have made it a little bit better had the tickets been $40 a piece instead of over $200 a piece.
Yeah.
I would have enjoyed it a little bit more, I think.
Yeah. And you look at F1 tickets for Miami, they sold out in a day. They were $800 or more per ticket for a 3 day pass. Because I thought about getting tickets for that race. I saw the price. I'm like, no way. Like, it's cheaper just to go to a race that's not in the state than it is to go to this one.
Yeah. I didn't know the tickets were that expensive. Damn.
Yeah, I didn't either. They're like 3 or 4 times that of if you go to Canada to watch a race.
What,
I mean,
the course in Miami, is it a street course in Miami?
yeah, they're building like a temporary track around the stadium.
Huh.
I mean, I'm not like a huge street course guy, but I would have gone because it's F1. But not for that price. I mean, that's ridiculous.
I didn't ever see what the course lined up was. So yeah, I mean, woke on Denny's comment. I do think NASCAR has a lot to learn from Formula One. I do have another one. Did you listen to DBC this week? Do you actively listen?
No, I did not listen this week. What do they? I mean, I'm like a
Well,
periodic listener, not every week, but sometimes I do listen.
we had a conversation in the group chat, and I think Jared posted on Twitter about the possibility of Kyle Busch retiring if he doesn't like the 550 stuff. About him just saying, F it, I don't want to drive this anymore. Because we know he's super vocal about hating that kind of racing. We hear it on the radio every single week. He put out Steve O'Donnell's email last week over the radio, which was great. In DBC this week, Freddie kind of let a little bit of a cat out of the bag when they were talking about where Ty Gibbs is going. So the conversation started with him talking about Ty Gibbs. And it got brought up that Ty Gibbs is a 1-year Xfinity driver. They think he'll race one full-time year in Xfinity, go right up to Cup because he's got the talent.
I think I would agree.
They started talking about, hey, where's Ty going to go? And Freddie said, I think there's a couple drivers that are on the back halves of their careers that are going to drive this next gen for 1 year, and if they don't like it, they're going to leave.
Yeah, I think I would agree.
Assuming that Ty Gibbs isn't going to race anywhere other than Gibbs or at least a Toyota Shack. That leaves Martin Truex, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin.
Yeah. I mean, is this more like a Ty Gibbs first part, or are we doing the Kyle Busch part first?
Let's do them both. Woke
Okay,
for joke, Ty Gibbs 1 year in Xfinity.
Yeah, I think I'm woke on that one. He's probably going to win like 10 races. There's literally no competition for him, so that's a shoe-in. But I think an interesting part is, we don't know where he's going to go. Like, I think 2311 is a real possibility if Kurt doesn't like the next-gen car because he's already kind of up there in age. He can just dip.
I forgot about Kurt.
Yeah, Kurt's one of them. I think if someone's going to leave, it's going to be Kurt, just because Truex, it's a Monster Energy car. It's a pretty seamless sponsorship transition. I don't see Truex leaving unless something else happens, because he's still doing pretty good. Like, he's still got a chance to win a title. So, and there's no sign slowing down for him. Hamlin's having one of the better years of his career. Kyle Busch, I wouldn't say he's having one of the best years of his careers, but I don't think he's been that bad either. I think that's more of a case of whether or not he's actually so sick of it he's going to leave. And that brings me to this thought. I think his heart wants to quit, but I think his mind knows that if he sticks around for a few more years, gets to his kind of the peak years that most drivers hit, he could probably win like 60 or 70, or not. He's already at 60. He could probably win 70 or 80 races. And if he sticks around, even if he hates it, he could become, top 5 in the wins list. So I think if he's going to stay, the only reason he's going to stay is trying to get into the, top 5 wins list, out of all the drivers that have ever raced. I think his competition is going to keep him around.
Well, I guess this would need to be addressed too. Then, are we still sticking that drivers hit their peak at 40? Ooh. I mean, we have Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin who are doing, they're kicking ass.
Same with Truex. He's up there. He's one of the 48 guys.
But, we also see, like, Jeff Gordon didn't really peak at 40. Jeff Gordon peaked at more 27, 28, up to his mid-30s. Same with Jimmy Johnson, kind of peaked in the early to mid-30s. Is that completely true anymore? Now that drivers aren't having to wheel the cars around, they don't get quite as much of that experience behind the wheel to give them that advantage.
This could be interesting because I'm sure a lot of it depends on the team that's around him. Like, Jeff Gordon, he had Ray Evernham. Who knows what his age 38 season would have been like with Ray Evernham, because Jeff had a little bit of a downturn, but later in his career, he did pick up a little bit before he left. And I do think that Kyle definitely has a lot more left in the tank. It's just up to whether or not he wants to tolerate the racing.
Yeah, and so I completely forgot about Kurt. I think that two that are most likely to step away. So I'm woke for Ty Gibbs 1 year in Xfinity. Mm-hmm. I'm with you. I think he's just going to blow the doors off everyone, kind of like William Byron did when he stepped up there. I think Kurt is one of them that could. And then, honestly, Kyle's probably the second one, just because we've seen Edwards step away just because he flat out didn't like it. Not saying Kyle's the same. Yeah. But Kyle's also got a kid that's really starting to get into racing right now. He's got his truck.
That's a point that I didn't think about.
We could see him step away and kind of do more family stuff. So it'll be interesting to see, being that Freddie was, fairly confident in the way he said it. And you'll have to go back and listen if you guys have listened to DBC this week. He was kind of like half hinting at it, like he already knows that there's a couple guys that might hang it up after next year if they don't like the next gen. So that'll be interesting.
I think Kevin Harvick's definitely got to be one of those guys. I know he's not he's not like a seat warmer for Ty Gibbs, but I think that when I think of guys getting fed up with a new car and leaving, like Harvick is like top of the list.
Did you see he just signed a new sponsorship deal today?
Yeah, the gear wrench thing.
Yeah, and they said
I want to say his deal ends like 2023 maybe.
Yeah, so I think
he could probably just leave whenever he wants.
Yeah. So that'll be and if anything, that'll open a seat for someone else to move.
Yep.
So we're already starting on silly season 2022. Shit.
I kind of do want to know the impact of the Kyle Busch retirement. Like, I don't want to, I'm not saying I want the guy to retire, but I do really want to see what the reaction would look like, because I think it'd be kind of a
Yeah.
big.
Well,
Well,
we know
we'll-
he's going to be outspoken about it. He's not going to be
Yeah.
like Carl, who just kind of steps away and keeps it to himself and
I
hints.
think Jimmy was. I don't think he liked it either. I think he mentioned that he liked to drive high horsepower cars, which is why he chose IndyCar.
Right. And we know Kyle's going to be vocal about it. So, I mean, that'll definitely be interesting if he does step away for some reason other than he's just old and sick of it. Like he's going to let us know.
Yeah, he'll be full. Like he's not going to hide.
Yeah. And then you're going to have all the boomers coming out saying he's just a crybaby. So,
right.
Did you have any other woke or jokes you wanted to hit on?
No, but I mean, I am kind of interested in the thing that Alex mentioned about championship picks. I know he was saying that like a woke or joke on, do I think Truex is actually going to win the championship? Obviously this is a work in progress. He's got to make the final four first. I think he's 1 point outside the cut line, but I do think if nothing goes wrong, he could do so because he's won, I think, 2 of the last 3 at Martinsville. Could have been all 3 if it wasn't for a loose wheel. So it's doable. And I think on the 750 ovals, he's been a little bit quicker than Larson most of the year on those Bristol, Richmond, or not Bristol, obviously that's different, but like a Richmond or a Martinsville or a New Hampshire, like a flatter track. Like that's kind of been where Gibbs has been a little better than Hendrick. So I think if there's anywhere where Kyle Larson might get beaten, it's those types of racetracks, especially like Phoenix and whatnot, because, I think of something like that. And I think of 750 teams, Truex is the first one that comes to mind. So I don't know. Like I have not missed a title pick since I think 2016. So you never say never. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I do think that as of right now, I'm like extremely comfortable saying that he's probably my title pick at the moment.
So you did it last year too. You called Chase Elliott, I think, a few weeks before the season ended.
No, I think I did. I had a tweet. I don't know if I posted it in the group chat. I think it was March 2019 where I said something like Chase Elliott's easy money in 2020.
Oh, so a full year and a half in advance.
Yeah, right. I was big on the Chase Elliott hype. I remember saying like a ton of times, this guy is going to win a title within 2 years, the moment Hendrick gets better. I promise you. And I guess it only took 1, so.
Yeah. Oh, you've done it in F1 too, right?
Yeah, I've done it in F1. I mean, obviously F1's a lot easier to predict, so.
Right. So you're talking about 2016. So Truex 2017. Logano
I had
2018.
Logano 2018, I believe. That was a preseason pick. I thought for sure it wasn't going to come true middle of the season, but it did. And then it's just weird. I think it's a little bit's luck, but I mean, I don't like the playoffs, obviously, and I think with the playoffs, you just predict who you think is going to be best at the last couple tracks of the year, and I think Truex is that guy. He could go out and win Martinsville. That's basically his playground. Go out there. Then at Phoenix, he spent the whole offseason prepping for Phoenix, and he's been super good at like Richmond, New Hampshire, all the places that correlate. Go out there, win that like he did in spring, and then boom. Like I don't think that would make him a deserving champion. Obviously, I think it'd be like the epitome of Mickey Mouse, but that's just I don't know how to say it. I think it's just how they're won. No.
I'm going to throw one more out there because you brought up Logano 2018 and the kind of up and down year he had and the year he's had this year, right? Which is 1 win. But he's still in the hunt for the Final Four spot.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about him.
I'm not either, but I mean, he's won at Martinsville before.
Yeah, I'm worried about him in the sense that, like, he could, what he does when he has to win. Like, he will run through you. And like I'm already having nightmares in my head of the 11 being in front of him and him just junking him to win that race.
I mean, yeah, we saw him move Mark Martin just to win at Pocono.
I know. Like I'm just picturing him like right rearing my driver at Martinsville for a win. I'm like, oh my, I don't want this man. Like, get this man as far away from my driver as possible.
So since the playoffs started, he has made the Final Four 4 times. He's made it to the round of 8 every year except 2017, where he completely missed the playoffs. So
that's kind of an odd one.
Woke or joke, Joey Logano is the best manipulator of the playoff system.
Oh man, this is tough. Like I would say woke for him, but I think he's not the only one. I think every year you see a guy that only does well on the tracks he has to do well at and nowhere else. And I think Truex is definitely the manipulator this year. If you look at non-playoff points, yes, he has 4 wins, but he would be 7th in points without playoffs. So he hasn't been the most consistent guy. But if you look at 750 tracks, Truex has been one of the guys. And if there's anyone that can just win Martinsville and Phoenix, like the 2 tracks you really need to focus on to win the title, he could do it. Logano could do it too. But I do think you're right in the sense that Logano was like the consistent manipulator of the format, because other than like 2014, 2015, 2016, he didn't really deserve to be in the Final Four of some of those years.
Right.
Like I know 2018, obviously he was not the best driver that year. He just won the last couple races of the year. 2019, I'm not sure. I was surprised he missed the Final Four 2019. That was a little bit weird. 2020 for sure. He didn't really do much most of the year except for win a couple early, and then really the clean air Kansas thing, that's what punched his ticket, and that was it. So I do think this year he's in a must win, but I mean, it's Logano, it's Martinsville. If it's a late restart, he will take everyone out in front of him to get there.
I mean, I'm going to go woke. So, and the reason I'm going to say this is because of his wins. Because in 2014 and 2015, he had a combined 11 wins. And he has 13 since then, 2016 on. So, I mean, you're talking about 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 6 seasons. He has 13 wins where he got 11 in 2 of them. But if you look at those 13 wins, a good third of them have come in just absolute perfect times in the playoffs. He'll get that one win early in the season to lock himself in, and then he'll kind of coast the rest of the year, figure it out, and then go out and kill it when it matters.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't like it. I think it's a Mickey Mouse championship method, but I mean, that's just how it is these days. The season doesn't really matter, and it kind of sucks. So
we need to get a Mickey Mouse trophy and just slap a logo on whoever wins it.
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Right, exactly.
It's a Mickey Mouse format. So, if a guy's got to win a Mickey title, he's got to do what he's got to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They're just doing what they can with the format given.
Because they know they're not going to be able to beat Larson week in, week out. Like that's an afterthought. They're not going to be able to catch that guy.
Yeah. Well, Denny might.
Yeah, he's the only one that really. Those are the only guys that were good the whole year. That's it.
Yeah. Before we head into what ifs, did you have anything important to say about the USGP? I know you probably watched more of it than I did. I was definitely back and forth. I watched the start. I watched a couple laps around 21, 22, and then saw the very end.
Yeah, I would say it lived up to the hype. It's a good race. A lot of things going on. I think the fight for the win was pretty fun to watch because you had 2 guys on kind of similar strategies. I mean, one of them would undercut, and one of them would pit later, get a couple lap pressure tires, and I did come down to the wire at the very end. The only thing I think that saved Max from winning that race is that a lapped car before the white flag gave him DRS, which was like that little bit he needed, because I think without that, Hamilton would have got DRS, would have closed a pretty big chunk in one straightaway, and then the next one he would have got DRS, and he probably would have had at least a chance at him. So
explain to me the DRS. So if you're leading, you can't use it, right? But you can if you're coming up on a car to pass?
Correct. Yeah. So you have to be within 1 second of a car, whether it's a lap car or a car in front of you, to get the device. And
so you can't just 4 seconds behind, slap on the DRS and haul out.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be within a second at the detection points. And obviously the detection points differ at every racetrack, and you'll see guys play games with that sometimes. I think back to 2013, there was a Hamilton Alonso at Montreal. They were doing this side by side for a couple laps, and they were coming out of a corner on a straightaway at the detection line, and you could see the detection line painted on the track. So Hamilton's ahead of Alonso, right? So what he does, he backs off to try and get behind Alonso at the detection point so he can get DRS. Then Alonso hits the brakes even harder so that Hamilton stays ahead of him. so that he can get the DRS. But it's not super common these days. It's just neat because some drivers really think ahead with that kind of stuff.
See, I always thought, I mean, I guess I just have only ever played the video games, and I guess I just stuck enough to be in the middle of the pack all the time. I just thought it was constantly on. As long as you hit that zone, you could go ahead and flip it.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting.
So it's pretty much just to encourage overtakes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay. I mean, some drivers don't like it, some do, but I mean, I wouldn't want, like, I don't think if the cars race better, you wouldn't need it, but with the way these race cars are, you probably have to have it.
That makes sense. So let's jump into what ifs. This is the beef of the show. It's our third one. I can't believe we've already done 3 of them. And we're still not running out of topics. So we're going to go what ifs. Nate, start off with yours.
All right. We're going to go kind of across the pond with this one. I want to say Colton did a Davey Allison one and one of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I got to go like full fanboy with this one. Somebody asked this question, one of the YouTubers for F1, and he asked, like, what if Alonso did stay at Ferrari after 2014 because his deal did not end until 2016? He left on his own accord because the team just didn't improve. What if he did stay there? What would the impact on the driver market be? What would the impact on the all-time wins list look like? And, what would the impact on the perception of other drivers in the era be? Because I think if you're looking at one guy that benefited more than anyone at Alonso being in an uncompetitive car, it's Lewis Hamilton. Like, it's got to be, because he went from having Alonso arguably be the most competitive driver next to him to being in something that couldn't compete. So I think that's probably one of the biggest areas that I wanted to get about.
So, I mean, you had a lot of bullet points lined out for this, and obviously I'm not as much of an F1 fan. So I know they had the big championship battle when Alonso won it over Hamilton when they were driving for McLaren, right?
Oh no, that was a ways back. So I guess
I know that was a ways back.
Hamilton and Alonso were basically tied, and they gave Hamilton on count back because he had more second place finishes, I believe.
Ah, okay.
So that's why Alonso's like, yeah, I don't want to stay with this team because this rookie kid is basically taking my number 1 status away. So he moved back to Renault for a couple of years. That was kind of and then in 2010 he goes to Ferrari. Everyone's like, okay, this is the move. He's going to win a lot of things, and he drove pretty well. Like, I would say that in the 5 years that he was at Ferrari, he only crashed out of a race maybe 3 times in that entire span. He was, I think, second in points in 2010. They lost the title in the last race because of strategy. They completely screwed up on that. 2011, car was not competitive. He did win a race. He did finish 4th in the points, ahead of Lewis Hamilton in a much faster McLaren. Then comes 2012. Everyone knows, that was probably Alonso's greatest season. He didn't win the title, but, I mean, he was leading the points probably for 2/3 of the year in a car that was definitely like 3rd or 4th fastest. Again, beats Hamilton. 2013, again, Hamilton probably has a little bit better car. Alonso beats him again. And then 2014, obviously, when Hamilton, he gets the full advantage of the hybrid era. Mercedes just comes out. They win, I think, 16 of the 19 races that year, maybe. If I'm remembering correctly. Alonso's Ferrari was probably like the worst Ferrari of the decade at that point. It was terrible. It wasn't good, but he drove well in the sense that he almost won a race in it. I think he beat Kimi Räikkönen like 18-2 in the races or something like that. So that car is kind of what led him to leave, because he's like, I'm tired of carrying the team on my back.
Oh, that's interesting. So, I mean, if you're saying what if he never left Ferrari, do you think he gets another world championship there?
Ooh,
I mean, do you think
this is the fun
with
part.
Ferrari?
This is the fun part. I think that if he would have stayed for one more year, I think that he definitely would have had a top 3 points finish in 2015, because you look at, they put Vettel in the car the next year. He was another high profile free agent. Obviously, He went out. He won 3 races in 2015. He actually almost beat a Mercedes to finish second in points with Rosberg. So I think if you put Alonso in the car in 2015, of course he probably doesn't. Mercedes is still better. Hamilton was just running away at that point. I don't think he beats Hamilton, but I do think that if Vettel did come that close to beating Rosberg, I would see that I could see him finishing second in points in 2015, which would be a fairly significant upset.
And do you think he's still with Ferrari today?
Oh, man. So I guess I'll give you the year rundown, right? So 2016 after that wasn't a super competitive year. Mercedes was probably better than they'd ever been at that point. Ferrari did not win a race with either driver, so I don't see Alonso winning that year. Probably finishes 4th or 5th in points. 2017, this is where things get fun. Like, they built a legitimate car that could challenge Mercedes at a lot of tracks. Vettel probably drove one of the best years of his career. He was really neck and neck with Hamilton up until he crashed at Singapore from the lead. That hurt a lot. And then after that, there were 2 or 3 mechanical failures in the last 5 or 6 races of the year that kind of just put the nail in the coffin. That was it. So I think Alonso easily finishes second that year. The mechanical failures will probably keep him from winning that title for sure. But I think 2018 is, if he gets a second or third title, I assume third, but that was the year for sure because as we know, Vettel drove a pretty good year for the first half. He won a lot of races. Ferrari was arguably the car for the first half. And then once Germany came around, Vettel crashed out of the lead in his home race. That was a really, really bad race for him. And then he spins from second in Monza, could have won that race. He spins on lap 1 again at Coda. Spins on lap 1 again in Japan. You look at all the mistakes he made. He lost almost 60 or 70 points on his own accord through that year. And yes, I do think Mercedes had a better car at the end of 2018, but I don't think it was bad enough to excuse the mistakes he made. And everybody seems to know that Alonso's main skill is not making mistakes. So I think put him in that car. Maybe he doesn't qualify as well as Vettel, but I do think that he could probably have stemmed the bleeding enough to where, yes, Hamilton probably wins out to end the season, but I do think that he would have finished well enough to keep the points lead by maybe a hair. So 2019, that's a fun one because that was obviously the arrival of Leclerc. That probably would have been pretty intense. I think one of those guys would have left. And I think at that point, he probably would have left F1 because if Leclerc was able to do that to Vettel, he could probably stand a chance at beating Alonso. So I'm saying that at that point, 2019 is probably his last year in F1.
You're saying total?
Yeah, I think that I think the McLaren years were so bad that it led him to do Indy 500. It led him to do the World Endurance Championship with Toyota. It led him to do the Dakar, all that kind of stuff. So if you put that on hold for a few years, if he's winning in F1, competing for titles, he probably doesn't have the time to go run Indy. He doesn't have the time to do the Rolex or all that stuff. So I think at that point, if he wanted to go do those things, it would have to be after he quits F1 cold turkey.
That's an interesting point. Do you so who's Alonso with now?
He is with Alpine, which was formerly the team that he won his first 2 titles with. But they're not, I wouldn't say they're the greatest team. They're like a mid-pack team. So he went there banking on the rules changes. Maybe they could get a loophole, get competitive, but who knows? So I do think that the biggest impact on him not being at Ferrari is probably Hamilton's status. I think if Hamilton had to compete against him for those 4 or 5 years that he didn't, I don't know if Hamilton is labeled as this absolute greatest driver ever because I think.
Right. Do you think Hamilton gets the 100th Grand Prix win this year?
I would say he's for sure already in the 90s. I don't think that Hamilton would have won less. I just think that Alonso probably would have taken wins off the table for him. He still would have got 100. It just wouldn't have been as soon as it was because Mercedes was still the dominant car. There was no way Alonso would have beat him in 2015, even if he finished second. 2016, those were all pretty big years. So even if Alonso wins 5 or 10 races those years, Hamilton just wins the other 10. So
right.
Think of
No,
it
that
that
makes
way. And
sense.
I think that, yes, Hamilton would have a lot more titles, obviously. Say Alonso gets 3, Hamilton's at 6 right now. No, he's probably at 6 now. But even though that happens, I would still say that fans would probably understand enough, say, hey, yes, he's got more titles, but I don't think that Alonso's that far off of him as a driver, because even today, he has not won a race since 2013. And people still say that he's the next best guy after Hamilton. So who knows where they would have put him if he was actually winning the races.
Right.
Because I think he left off at 32 wins, which I think he was 28 or 29 years old when he won his last race. So he's pretty young. Do the math. I think Senna at 41 was the next guy on the wins list. He could have easily got that because Vettel won, I think, 14 races at Ferrari. So if he stays there longer, maybe he wins 20 or 25. He's probably pushing. He might get to Prost at 51 because if he was from 32, I think 45 or 50 probably would have been where he ends up on the wins list.
So we had another one from Alex who submitted. For those of you that don't know, he's not here. I'm poking a little fun at him. Alex's name is Sterling. He's named after Sterling Marlin. So he wanted us to talk about this. In 2002 at Kansas, Sterling Marlin had a pretty dominant points lead at the time and crashed and broke his neck. Sidelined for the rest of the year. This obviously led to Jamie McMurray's career trajectory, which we'll talk about that here in a minute. If Sterling doesn't have that crash at Kansas, or he just doesn't get hurt in that crash at Kansas, do you still think he wins the title?
Oh, man, this is tough. I know I wanted to say somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if he was leading the points at the time of his injury. He might have just lost it or something, because 2002 was that was a crazy year. There was a million different points leaders. So even if he did lose a points lead, I think he very well could have got it right back, given how good they were. But I can't say it for certain because, like you were alluding to, 2002 was super competitive. There were 4 or 5 guys that had a real chance at winning that title. So even if he doesn't win, I do think his career is on the same path, because his 2001, 2002 are kind of like a flash in the pan for someone who didn't see them, because I wasn't around for those years. And you go back, you look at the stats, and it's where did that come from? Where did that speed come from with Sterling Marlin in those last couple of years where he was winning?
So I was just looking into it. I thought he had the lead at Kansas, but he was second.
How far back was he?
He was not. Oh no, he was third.
Really?
But I mean, it was still a super close race. I can't find the exact.
Okay, so he was still
It was a super close race. So it said at.
Yeah. I think even if he wins, though, I would say that he probably still struggles for the remainder of his career, because those 2 years, they literally seem like a flash in the pan. They're inexplicably fast, and it's how did he get here? What's going on?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know that Marlin wins the title, just because to that point, he had the lead for the majority of the year, and then once those final 10 races came together, obviously he won the Southern 500 that year, and that was actually his last career win. But he started to kind of fall off. He had a string of sub 30th place finishes. He had a sub of mid 20 place finishes, and that's what ultimately lost him the lead to that point. So I don't think we miraculously see the trajectory turn around and him whoop ass. But granted, he was going to a couple of his best tracks that he named, Talladega, Lowe's, etc. So maybe we saw him pull the cat out of the bag with one of those.
Yeah, he was really good at Lowe's. I know that for sure, because he won the year before, I think.
Yep. Yeah. And so I don't know that we do see him win the championship. I mean, this is going to be one of those Mark Martin what ifs too. So, I mean, this is a really tough one as far as does he win the championship. But the biggest what if that comes out of that is, if he doesn't get hurt, what does Jamie McMurray's career look like? Because we know the next week at Lowe's or 2 weeks later at Lowe's, McMurray hopped in Marlin's car and went out and beat Bobby Labonte for the race win. Yeah,
I don't know where his career would have gone from there, because obviously I don't know a lot about McMurray's start. I wasn't around. I was barely alive back then. I was a few months old. So I'm thinking
What year?
Maybe his career doesn't take off the way it did, but I do think he still would have made it to Cup regardless, because he did seem to have a pretty good record in the Busch Series from back then. From what I can tell, I wasn't alive to verify how hyped up he was as a prospect, but I do think that his career would have for sure, he wouldn't have gone full time in Cup that instantly almost.
Yeah, so I'm gonna look up the Busch Series standings. I mean, he was really good in the Busch Series. He was almost a shoe-in to get a Cup ride in 2003, possibly pushed back to 2004. But everyone knew he was coming up, to take someone's ride. However, I don't think we see him signed to Ganassi immediately.
Right.
Obviously, the momentum from that win got him the contract. B, I don't think we see him stay around in top equipment as long. I don't think he goes to Roush. And of course, by the time he left Roush, he still had 2 career wins, one being in 2002 at that second race, the next being in Daytona in 2007, where he beat Kyle Busch. Past that, I mean, obviously he goes back to, the Ganassi Earnhardt at that point, and really lights it up in 2010. And then past that, didn't really do a whole lot. I know he got another win at Talladega, a couple good finishes sprinkled out, but he was never really a top driver, in my opinion, outside of maybe 2010.
It's tough to justify. I think that maybe 2004 he was really good that one year. He had like career highs in most areas in 2004, and then 2010 was weird. Like he won all the crown jewels, and then he didn't make the chase. It's like, how?
Right?
I'm confused with that, and I do think he was kind of an anomaly as a driver. To win in your second race, then to I would say he peaked in 2004. Like I still think that's the best year of his career, even though he didn't win a race. And then 2010, win all the crown jewels, and then go back to kind of just running mid-pack. Like I can't understand like the path his career's on, because like up and down, up and down.
Yeah, that one flash of brilliance in 2010. And then I mean nothing really before or after that. Even though he had a great season in 2004. He didn't get any wins. He really didn't do a ton. He didn't make the chase in 2004 either. I'm almost curious as to how many times he actually did make the chase or the playoff cut.
Man.
It wasn't many. I mean, I could count them on one hand. I know that.
I know that someone did like a what if on his 04 and said that if he did make the chase, he probably would have finished like top 5 at points. Like his chase run was that good. It's just he wasn't in it.
Right. I definitely don't think Jamie McMurray has as long of his career as he does. Maybe we see him do kind of like a Lannon Castle thing where he races a full-time year here and there, and then does more Busch Series stuff, maybe gets a full-time truck ride or something. But I definitely don't think he's one of those lingerers in the Cup Series, kind of like Ryan Newman's turned into.
Yeah, that's honestly hate to say it with Newman, but I think he was doing really well before the injury, and now it's kind of just he's lingering. There's nothing else to say.
Yeah. That's really tough to see. I mean, he was poised to win that Daytona 500, and then since then hasn't done anything.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Roush isn't the greatest team, but then again, he definitely got hurt as a driver performance-wise. I don't know if it stemmed directly from his accident or it's just a downturn, but he definitely, he was good in 2019. I think he pointed his way into the chase, and he actually almost he was winning like top 3 in one of the chase races and something like that.
Yeah, he almost won it. Talladega against Ryan Blaney.
He got pushed way out front, and he almost won that race. I remember picking him to win that race, and I was really mad he didn't win that race. But it's a shame, because I do think that it's sad seeing a guy that used to be able to run top 10. Now it's just like, man, I really hope he finishes 20th.
Yeah. So another what if, and I came up with a couple that I'm really interested in. This one we kind of chatted about a little bit before we came on. What if Ray Evernham didn't leave crew chiefing Jeff Gordon, didn't leave Hendrick Motorsports to start his own team? It's safe to say that he wouldn't have crew chiefed for 20-something years, right? He would have been moved up into kind of Chad Knaus competition director position. But what do we see out of that 24 car in Hendrick Motorsports if Ray doesn't leave?
Oh man, 100 wins for Jeff Gordon, maybe. I mean, he left
Maybe.
at 93. I think 100 was very well possible if he had a couple more years because he won a title with Robbie Loomis. So thinking of it from that perspective, it's like, what's to say that he doesn't win 100 races with Ray Evernham?
Right. Right. Yeah. And you look at that 01 season, that was Evernham's first year that he was gone from Hendrick.
And he did really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, still went out and swept the season, had the title locked up for the final race. We see him run really good a few years after that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that we see Jeff Gordon 100 wins. We see him get a 5th title, possibly a 6th.
Sure.
And I don't think Jimmy Johnson comes in and sweeps house like he did.
I definitely think
really
it
up
would
for
have been a
debate.
lot tougher.
Yeah. Because then at that point, you would have had Knaus going head-to-head with Evernham as the 2-star crew chiefs in NASCAR. Week in, week out. I think Hendrick Motorsports doesn't wait until as late as they did this season to get that 200th win. I think they get it 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. We're talking about not seeing a fall off in Jeff Gordon's career towards the mid 2000s.
Yeah, because I know he kind of had a little revolving door at crew chiefs in the late 2000s. I think he had like Steve Letarte one year. He almost won with Letarte.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to say who did he have in like 2009, 2010? Was it Alan Gustafson still, or because I know he ended his career with Gustafson.
Let me look it up.
Because I know I'm blanking on somebody here. I don't know how long Letarte was his crew chief. Maybe 3 years.
Steve Letarte was 2009. Because I remember Letarte being around a while.
I think Letarte was what, like 2007, 2008, 2009, maybe.
So Letarte was end of 2005, 2006, 7, 8, 9. Wow. Let me see here.
And then maybe it was like Gustafson every year after that.
Yeah, I think it went straight into Gustafson.
And there's some
actually left Gordon before 2000.
Yeah, like I don't know how long Everton would have stayed for sure. Like that's the fun part for me. Like how long do you think he would have been there?
It depends on what kind of position he was offered. Maybe he was offered another car to go crew chief with. Because I remember him saying at one point that it kind of just wasn't clicking anymore with him and Gordon.
Right.
Maybe that was kind of an interpersonal relationship. Maybe there was something going on with the cars at that time. So I don't know if we see him step directly into a competition director standpoint. But I mean, this is one of my best ones because Evernham wasn't. I mean, they won a lot of races, but they were never really one of the dominant teams.
Yeah, I would say that like in terms of like a peak of a career, it's hard to really name anybody that came close. I do think that Gordon at his peak, I would say that he's better than Johnson at his peak.
I would agree with that.
Like I know there's not as many titles, but I think that you look at one way, it's like Knaus and Johnson were really, really good in the last 10 races of every year. But if you imagine that over the full year, that's what Gordon was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd agree with that. I don't know that current Gordon didn't have a peak as long as Johnson.
Right. It wasn't as long, but I do think that what was wild to me about his career is that somebody mentioned that his quote unquote the lull of his career, like say 2002 to 2015 or whatever, he still won 40 races in that time. But then again, the 40 races he won in those 12 years, he won that in 4 years with Evernham.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really fun one. Another one I had was in 1990 at Richmond, Mark Martin was handed a penalty of 46 points in the standings, driver points. Roush was also fined $40,000 for, a little spacer in the engine that was just barely over the allotted amount. What if Martin is never handed that 46-point penalty?
I think he wins that title. I think it's really, really fair to say he wins that title.
Right, I agree. So I'm looking up the points now. Martin lost it by 21 points.
Yeah, so that for sure, that was more than the deficit he lost
Yeah.
by.
Yeah, so I think he wins that title. I think that swings more momentum in his favor.
Yeah.
We were talking about it. Martin finished fifth 5 times. He finished second in the point standings. 1990, 94, 98, 2002, which we hit on, and 2009. So I think Martin gets that title in 90. I think he also gets 1 or 2 later on in his career. I think we see Martin in at least a 2-time champion just because of that momentum swing, and he doesn't necessarily have that monkey on his back still.
Yeah, and I want to say that Earnhardt had like a really off year one year. I don't know if it was 1991 or 1992 that he had that off year.
92.
Okay, so I think that if you're looking statistically, maybe that could have been Mark Martin's second title.
Yeah.
Because I know that he was one of the 6 guys that was like in title contention, but then again, there were too many guys that were good that year for me to say that he would have for sure won.
Yeah, I mean, that was also the year that Bill Elliott kind of whooped ass for the majority of the year.
Allison
was really good for the majority of that year. That's a whole nother conversation as far as Davey Allison's just 1992 season. I'm a book of knowledge on that one. But
yeah,
you're
probably going to say that Allison walks away with the title if he never gets hurt in any of those races.
Yeah. Oh, easily walks away with the title. Not only that, but I think he wins it in 93 as well.
Ooh, man, I forgot. Let me see. I don't know who.
Because he was killed in 93.
Yeah, so I know that Irvin was like the fill-in driver for half of that year, and then they put him in full-time 94. Irvin probably almost wins 94. Maybe he does win 94.
He was close in 94. Had Irvin not got hurt.
Almost leading the points when he got hurt.
Yeah, had Irvin not got hurt, he would have won the 94 title, in my opinion. So I think
people forget that year that when Jeff Gordon won the first Brickyard 400, it's because Irvin blew a tire from the lead.
Right.
So it's like Ernie Irvin was really, really, really good that year. So what's to say that he wouldn't have won that title if he never got hurt?
Right. Yeah, I mean, we kind of stemmed off of Mark Martin, but I mean, there's a whole slew of things that had one race gone different.
Yeah.
NASCAR history is completely different.
And what about if Ernie Irvin's tire never goes down at that practice session in Michigan, what happens to Dale Jarrett? Like, he probably doesn't go to Yates that early. Maybe he never goes there.
Yeah, I think we see Jarrett stick around at Gibbs for maybe another year or two.
So that hurts Bobby Labonte then.
Right. I mean, we throw a wrench in everything.
If Bobby Labonte would stay at Bill Davis, I think.
Yeah, because he was driving that 22.
So then who goes to the 22? What happens to Ward Burton?
Right.
He could probably name a driver after driver that gets affected by this whole thing.
Right. And that, the butterfly effect trickles down into Chase Elliott driving for Toyota right now.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, Chase Elliott is driving for Front Row Motorsports.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other ones. Oh man, I watched a video today about Gary Ballou.
Oh man, we could do a whole episode on Gary Ballou.
Because I wanted to know, it's like he was seeming to break into NASCAR right about the time that he got arrested, and like they said, he won a Busch race. He was actually competitive in his Cup starts, and then right as he's knocking on the door, he gets arrested.
Right. One of the hardest things was on the Dale Jr. download, and I think it's in his book too, is that when he was serving prison time in Alabama, he was within, I think, like a couple miles of Talladega. Maybe he was within a mile, and he could hear the cars racing as he was sitting in jail. Man, that would be tough.
Yeah, I definitely think he would have won races in Cup if he not get hurt. I mean, I don't know about champion, but he definitely would have won a race.
I'd like to do an episode in the future. We'll get Alex on board. I'm sure he would be, about the best cheaters in NASCAR. And top of my list.
This is different. He's a legal cheater. He's not like a sport cheater. He's like actual breaking the law. Like,
right.
There's
like saying he did some weird shit.
Yeah, John Paul Sr., probably the shadiest man in racing. No one even knows where he is still. They think that he's pushed people out of planes. He's killed people. I would say, who else is up there? Randy Lanier is another noted. Like, there were a lot of sports car drivers back then that were like in like a smuggling ring, and there's just like there's some things that went on that people today probably wouldn't fathom. They're like, there's no way this could happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and you're talking about. I don't know if you listened to the white knuckle God fear and spun out and half turned over racing stories.
Oh man, I listened to that once and I really liked it, and I've ever since then I forgot to turn it back on. But I'm like, this is a good podcast.
One about a race in the 1960s where there was something. I think the track was coming up. It's been a while since I listened to this one, and they shortened the race from 200 laps to just over 100. And the fans rioted and basically locked the drivers into the track. And like there were fights going on and stuff like that. Like Richard Petty had to kind of fight his way out of the infield. NASCAR has a really rough history. Even not that long ago. It wasn't like it was 100 years ago.
Yeah, they had all sorts of stories. I mean, there were that Talladega race where no one wanted to drive. And
yeah.
There's things that go on in the sport that I think it'd be cool if you saw, the new fans on NASCAR Twitter that are maybe like younger than I am, which is crazy to think about. And just go take the group of fans that are younger than Jimmy Johnson's first title, people born after 2006. Show them the stuff, and they're probably like, "Whoa, no way."
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like you could do that with a lot of motorsports, like even Formula One. I think a lot of the
shady races, man.
The younger fans could really do themselves a lot of good from watching some of those older documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best Formula One documentaries I've ever seen was titled One.
Oh, yes.
The whole safety of F1.
Yeah.
And holy shit, that sport was dangerous. There was they lost a driver every 3 weeks for a series of like 2 years.
What's crazy is I actually found that documentary like in full English on YouTube, like high definition.
I watched it, and my girlfriend watches some racing documentaries. Like she's interested in learning about it, but she's not a huge fan of Formula One. Like she doesn't like Drive to Survive at all, but she was adamantly like, hey, we pause this documentary, come sit down so we can turn it back on. Like she was interested.
Oh yeah.
If y'all haven't seen it, you can find it on YouTube.
Yeah, I actually saw it when it came out, I think 2013 when I was like a little kid, and I'm like, oh man, this is really cool. And I actually read Jackie Stewart's book, and it has a lot of the stuff he said in that film. He elaborated on it, and he's in, there were races where more than one driver died back then.
Yeah. Like one accident would kill 2 drivers, 3 drivers sometimes.
Like there was a race, I think at Spa in 1960. This is before Jackie Stewart made it to F1, but somebody, I think Sterling Moss, broke his legs in practice. That's one, right? There were no marshals. So one of the drivers gets in his car, drives back to the pits to go get somebody to find him. His steering column snaps. He gets paralyzed. He sues Lotus. He wins, which is like crazy uncommon in racing. And then after that, 2 drivers die in the same race.
Yeah.
Like all in a single weekend.
And even you can look back even to 1994 and the last time multiple drivers died in the same race weekend. They had, a good span of like 7 or 8 years between deaths in Formula One, and they had 2 consecutive days, plus they had one get hurt.
Right.
Ronald Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna were the ones killed, and that led to Imola getting completely, reconfigured almost.
Yeah, there's no Tamburello now. It's like there's a chicane there. And
right.
You remember Spa? They made Eau Rouge. They made a chicane one year.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Senna, in a quote, said that if you take away Eau Rouge, you take away the reason I do this. And sure enough, after he dies, the response is to take it away.
Right. Yeah, Senna's not here. Let's take it away.
I don't know. Like, there's just weird things, and I do think One is probably like comprehensively the best racing documentary I've ever seen. Like, I know it's long, but if you watch through the whole thing, it's comprehensively the best. Like, it covers the entire history of the series. Yeah,
that should be one of our
watch along things.
Watch alongs, yeah. So for those of you watching, we're planning a new segment this off season. We're not going to give out too much of it because I want Alex to maybe lead that way, but we do have some big things coming with documentaries in the future.
We've got a little bit of a collection that we want to start, and I do believe that One is going to be one of our documentaries.
I would hope so. Even if me and you just sit and watch it, I'd be all for that.
I don't think the other 2 have seen it yet.
I would doubt it. I mean, if
They
if
need to
Alex
see it for the
hasn't
first
seen,
time. Like we've seen
yeah,
it, but I don't care. I could watch it 20 times and never get tired.
yeah, yeah. I
Like,
mean, every time I watch it, I pick up little things that I missed the time before.
yeah, I think if we get together and we watch it, I think there's no way the other two are not going to like it.
Yeah,
Like if you like racing, you will like the documentary.
yeah, great documentary. Man, we went off on a huge tangent, but shit, that was a good conversation.
Yeah. What else we got? I mean, we got so documentaries. We got one. We've got a whole like nostalgia trove full of documentaries. We're not going to say what they are, but one of our hosts found a whole playlist of old documentaries that would really, really be good. I don't know if anyone else here has seen them, but like,
So I've seen
you guys find out. I think
few of them. Yeah. There's another one for you guys on YouTube. I get a lot of documentaries from YouTube. This is a NASCAR one.
Yeah.
It's like Southern Legends of Speed, and it's all about the history of Darlington. That's it. It's just 45 minutes of Darlington. That's a really, really good one.
There was one. I want to say there used to be one that played during rain delays about Martinsville. I wish it was on YouTube. I've looked everywhere on it, and it's not on YouTube. But the Darlington one is for sure on YouTube.
Yeah, the Darlington one's good. Another one is Petty Blue. It's actually narrated by Kevin Costner.
Oh,
That's a good one.
I don't remember much of it, but I do think I watched that when I was like a little kid.
Yeah, that
would be a fun one too.
I mean, you can just type in NASCAR documentary on YouTube, F1 documentary on YouTube. I've seen most of them. One is definitely towards the top. There's a couple other ones that are really good. There's one about just the technology in F1. It was a good 45 minutes, and it dives into the Williams car in the early 90s.
That was like a spaceship, basically. I think it's the most advanced car there ever was.
Yeah, it's completely outlawed after a season. I don't think it made it a full season.
I know. I think Prost drove the predecessor, or not predecessor. He drove the like the new edition of the Mansell car in '93. Mm-hmm. He won the title in it. He still said that he didn't like it because he thought there were so many driving assists that it basically didn't feel connected to the track. Like it had traction control, active suspension, automatic upshifts. That was another one. Probably had launch control. Who knows? It literally, like the suspension being active, that was crazy. Like I know that got banned quick, but just seeing that in action is insane.
The active suspension was the big thing for me. So it read, I think it was like 200 times a second, and it constantly kept up on a computer chip of how high the car was off the ground, and it automatically adjusted the suspension to keep it at the optimum level, basically with every single pebble in the asphalt that they hit.
Yeah, and that's probably what threw Prost off. He's probably like, it has to feel weird, right?
I know the car's driving at here and it doesn't. Height. Yeah.
And you've seen videos when that suspension fails, like it'll just spin the car out.
Yeah.
Because it forgets where it is on the track.
Yeah, and then it goes into like the skid plates in F1.
Oh, the wood things on the bottom. Yeah, those are pretty cool.
Teams. It eventually led to the FIA mandating your skid plate cannot wear more than this, micro amount during the race.
Did it get into like double diffusers, all that kind of loophole stuff?
It's been a while since I've seen it.
I was just watching like a video the other day on this, and it was like the top 10 most innovative like cheats in F1. There was a team that pulled out like when the ground effects were a thing. They just stuck a big fan on the back of the car with Nicky Ralph. They won a race and they got banned the next day. There was like
another one was the
6-wheel cars. Those things were ridiculous.
Oh, I have a Hot Wheels of that. I was going to ask if you wanted it.
I think I have that.
Yeah,
is it blue by any chance? Because I know I have the 6-wheel.
Yeah, blue and white Terrell. Yep.
Mm-hmm. This is ridiculous. I mean, there's a 6-wheel car. We've got the fan car. I think
the F Ducks.
Oh yeah, that was kind of like my time because I know it was like 2010, 2011. That was kind of interesting because you could see drivers take corners with one hand just to have that thing.
Well, wasn't it? Who was it that they caught on camera driving the car with no hands because their one hand was covering the F duct and the other one was doing something else like shifting?
Oh,
I don't know if they were still shifting like that at the time.
Yeah, I know they moved to paddles. I think by 1986, I think every car was paddle, but
the other one was doing something. Yeah,
he was like, I know back then that certain adjusting buttons that are now on the wheel were not on the wheel back then, like brake bias, stuff like that. they'd have like little levers and stuff that they could pull. And I don't know who it was because every team had different F ducts. Like some of them you could use your leg, some of them you can use your arm.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. We got F ducts. We got. I know there's more. There's more cheats for sure out there that I can think of. Like you remember the dual axis steering or whatever it is Mercedes pulled out. That
Yes.
that was. I guess that was only for like tire warming purposes, but that was beyond ridiculous.
So if you guys are watching, we cannot, due to Twitter settings, we can't see your comments.
Yeah.
Cheyenne just commented, what's the one we watched about Ayrton Senna? So we watched a couple. We watched Senna. I've got that one on DVD.
Yeah, that was one of the first I watched. And
where it's just the complete history of Ayrton. It goes through go-kart days to his death. That one was really good. That's actually where I got my poster from. I don't think I've ever shown it on camera.
Yeah, I do. I might have seen it before. I'm not sure.
So it's a painting. It's called What If by Oleg Conan. And it's a picture of his wreck at Imola in San Marino, 94.
Yeah.
Where he's sitting there and we've all seen the damaged car and him just laying over in the cockpit. But it's actually got one of his belts thrown off and he's starting to get up out of the car.
Yeah.
So that's where I got that from. The other one we watched was the One documentary where it goes through, like Nate and I were talking about, just the history of F1 safety.
I do wish that they would pull one out for like Prost. You know, they've got one for Senna, and
Prost isn't such a bad rep from that Senna movie.
Right. I think that, yes, his 1989 title was really, really shady. Like, I'll say that. Like, he definitely he took Senna out, and then afterwards he went into the officials' room. Like, there's no, like, if it's for sure shady, but I do think that he deserves a little bit more respect in terms of, like, you know, being an all-time great, because he did, after all, I think he had 6 teammates that either won a title or went on to win a title as teammates. He beat every single one of them at least once.
Yeah.
And I do wish that more people were like, hey, maybe this guy wasn't so bad.
Yeah, he definitely gets a bad rep. And I'm on the same page. I didn't know much about him until I saw Senna, and then I got interested in learning about
what
him.
in the world?
Yeah.
Because I think someone mentioned that you look at the cars back then, it's like, oh, people are like, oh, you know, he was a smooth driver, which obviously now everyone can say they're a smooth driver. But the cars back then, they had like 1,000 horsepower. There were manual gearboxes,
right?
No headrests. It's like he drove the cars smoothly in a time where you couldn't really do that.
Yeah.
He almost made it look like it was delicate and simple when most guys were pretty much just on the edge the entire time.
Right. Yeah, I love the footage of Senna at Monaco setting the pole speed, and it's got the onboard of him actually grabbing gears during it.
I can't imagine doing that.
Yeah, the balls on that guy.
Yeah, no, it's like they compare it to Prost, and you know, with Prost, the onboard never really shakes that much. And,
yeah,
like it's almost. I don't know how he drives that smoothly in a car that, you know,
wasn't meant to drive smoothly. Yeah,
it's like, how on earth is he able to just slow it down like that?
Yeah. So I mean, those were a couple good documentaries. I can even hop on here and see.
Yeah, we'll pull some up.
Some of the other good ones I saw. The Pit Stop in 2 Seconds. I started watching that one. The history of Formula 1 pit stops. That's a really good one.
I'll pull up a channel for you that you might like if you're getting into like technology stuff. There's a channel called Driver 61. And
I've seen him. I just started watching him.
British guy like talks to like the driver coach, and he talks about like he does these little like 10-minute videos about certain technology pieces. He talks about the brakes, suspension, tires, you know, mass damper. He talks about the CVT thing that Williams tried to do with like infinite gears, and he talks about everything. Not just F1. He talks about the helmets, how they change. He talks about you know, the steering wheels, the engines. He talks about a couple of drivers, how they drive. He talks about what makes the brakes in F1 cars special. I mean, I do think the brakes one was pretty cool because I don't think that people like us would ever be able to comprehend how quickly the car can stop.
Yeah, so like I think it's Donut Media, maybe. Maybe it's Vin Wiki. One of them has a video of a guy who was offered a chance to drive a little bit older Formula One, So
Yeah.
this was maybe 2018, 2019. He got to drive a 2014 Formula One car. And it's pretty much the closest any civilian can get to driving an F1 car. And he said the brakes were ridiculous. Like he would press on the pedal so hard he felt like his leg was going to break. And the team was like, okay, that's 70% pressure. You have to hit that every corner or else the car won't stop.
And I remember Jeff Gordon when he did that seat swap with Montoya. He's like, "Oh my God, I don't have the strength to drive these cars, man."
Yeah.
And he mentioned that, or Montoya mentioned that just lifting off the throttle in an F1 car and letting the downforce slow the car down is the same as hitting the brakes to full power on a Cup car.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I think
there's a website for Brembo. If you go on there, you can search up like F1 Brembo top braking sections. They'll like give you timing, G-forces. Like, okay, so here, let's say I think it was Canada, right? I think it was like turn 1 or whatever. They're like, you brake from 190 miles an hour to 70 miles an hour in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's like 5 Gs, and it slows you down that much in maybe a couple hundred yards. And they're like, yeah, you apply this much pounds of pressure to the pedal. It's for this long. This is the force. I think some of the tracks got up to 6 Gs.
Yeah.
Just getting thrown forward. And it's like, I think one of the therapists for the drivers is like, yeah, back in 2017, they made the cars faster. And someone complained like, that whatever's like in my tear ducts is getting pulled out of my eyes every time I hit the brakes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what Jimmy said when he tested Alonso's car. He said when he hits the brakes, it has such power that his eyes lose focus.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
If you ever see pictures of people that stand at the trackside and they're going from top speed all the way down to like 40 miles an hour in maybe 100 meters or like 100 or 150 meters.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like the timing on the Brembo sheet, it's like, oh, they do this in 2.8 seconds. It's like, how?
I couldn't imagine braking in one of those cars without a Hans.
I think I'd probably die.
Like you just brakes and like.
Yeah, I think it'd actually kill me.
It's crazy.
And it's crazy like you drive a road car and you hit the brakes and it's like, okay, this is enough. And
yeah, you feel the seatbelt catch you. I couldn't imagine stronger than that.
Yeah, and I wonder, someone said that when you hit the brake pedal, the G-forces that throw you forward actually help you push the pedal down a little bit.
Yeah.
But you don't want to push it too far, or else you're going to lock up, and it's like...
Yeah, what do you want me to do here? Yeah.
And then someone mentioned back in the 60s or 70s when people like Jackie Stewart were racing, the gearboxes back then they didn't have the synchro or rev matching or whatever it's called. So every downshift they would have to heel and toe, which is like, so if you look at the Senna Monaco footage, he was having to heel toe every downshift because the gearbox wouldn't match the revs manually or automatically. So it's like, I don't know the process to drive a car with 3 pedals that quickly. Like everything just happens so quick, and it's like,
yeah. Have you seen the footage of him doing the heel toe in just like a regular street car?
Yeah, that was like, okay, yeah, I'm never gonna be able to do that.
Yeah, and you got to think that's probably a half speed of what he was doing in an F1 car. Like that was probably super easy for him. Like it's ridiculous.
Another one, some of the older drivers, man. Like I know people beat the dead horse, like, people are just, they're nostalgic. The older drivers aren't that good, but really, if you look at the drivers back then, some of the things they had to do back then are just like, you can't not respect that.
Another one I saw, I don't remember if it was What the F1 or if it was Driver 60. Oh, I found it here. Spies and Lies. It's a short documentary, 20 minutes, and it goes through the whole McLaren F1 deal.
The Spygate?
Yeah, where some random dude in a print shop who was a Ferrari fan.
Oh, I got a book on that.
Let me pull this out. He found out that McLaren had a spy in Ferrari's garage, sending them the info for Ferrari's cars, and they ended up getting fined like millions of dollars. Like it was crazy. It's been a while since I've seen that one.
And people talk about how like Alonso threatened to blackmail and stuff like that. And there's a book that's written by one of the mechanics from McLaren at the time. He goes on to I'm halfway through it now, but he actually goes on to talk about how Hamilton was pretty clever. Like, people didn't think he was that involved politically, but he was, even as a rookie. He just said that Lewis Hamilton is very good at making himself come off as innocent every time.
Yeah.
Like, he would do all sorts of clever little tricks just to do whatever he could to come out on the good side.
Yeah. So that's another crazy one.
There's things that go on in these series that you wouldn't know about, and I'm honestly glad that more people are getting into F1 or IndyCar, because you remember the time when F1 used to be on Speed Channel. Like, I felt like one of 10 people in the world watching it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, wow, everyone wants to get in F1.
Yeah, I remember, 10, 15 years ago when I was kind of a kid growing up and a teenager, I used to think, why is this the number one motorsport in the world? Like, who watches this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I get it after watching all these documentaries and, watching some races live.
I don't think it's the – go on?
No, it just blew my mind how popular it was.
Right. Like, I don't think it's like – obviously, I don't think it's a driver's championship all the time because of the cars, but it's just interesting because there's really a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Go on. And I do think that the cool thing about F1 is that stuff like that gets celebrated. Whereas in NASCAR, you never really get to hear the stuff that goes on about what makes the cars go fast, the technology, the little secrets that the NASCAR teams have. You never hear about them. Even 30 years after some of the things come out, we never know what goes on. I don't understand that, because F1 teams will be like, oh, yeah, they'll say, oh, yeah, 5 years ago we cheated. We don't care.
Yeah.
They'll brag about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. Nate, do you have anything for us before we close off here?
Honestly, I don't know. Like, I do think we covered a lot of bases that I didn't plan on covering, but they're good anyways. I would suggest, though, for F1 books, this one, halfway through it, it's already really good. It's basically told from the perspective of a mechanic for McLaren at the time. You worked with a lot of different people, had a lot of cool stories. There was one at my other house of the Jackie Stewart book that was really good. I've already read it, but it's really good.
So that one you're reading for the audio listeners, what's the title of it and the author?
It's called The Mechanic. It's by Mark Priestley. And it's The Mechanic, The Secret World of the F1 Pit Lane. He has got stories about, the nightlife in F1. What's it like? What's it like traveling? What's life like on the team? And he's worked with a lot of like big name drivers, and he went through Spygate. He went through some of these controversies. And I think he was there for Ligate too, which was 2009. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another big one we could have damn near half episode on.
Yeah, Crashgate, obviously, it's like the one.
Yeah, Crashgate was another big one.
Brought Nelson Piquet Jr. to NASCAR too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm gonna have to steal that book from you when you're done.
Yeah,
you have to send it up to me.
You have to read this book, man. Like, I'm probably gonna finish it in the next couple of weeks. So,
hell yeah. Other than that, I don't have much else. Say no to Phoenix. If you guys were watching last week, I'm gonna have a whole article coming out about why you should not watch the Phoenix race. Check out our last episode 37, for my reasons as to why you should not watch Phoenix. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be sharing it on Twitter, Facebook, all platforms, and it'll be live on fanfuel.com or fanfuelmotorsports.com almost immediately after the Martinsville race. Kind of going to hype it up. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I'm pretty well set. This is a good episode, just the two of us without our mediator here.
Yeah, we didn't really have much. We didn't have much of a schedule. We just kind of went around.
Yeah. I know Alex set up the main bullet points for the Woker joke. And then we went into a huge 45-minute tangent on F1, which is, it was great. That was a good conversation.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think that something that we need to get is we need to get more like fans from like IndyCar, F1, sports cars, all the series that most racing podcasts in our demographic don't cover.
Yeah.
There's a lot of podcasts that just cover NASCAR. So we want to be a little bit different. We want to give you a little bit of everything. NASCAR is obviously our main thing because it's our domestic series, but once IndyCar comes back on, once F1 gets back into full swing next year, we're going to try and give you F1 content, IndyCar content, Rolex 24 content.
Yeah.
Stuff that
The
maybe
World
will
of
separate
Outlaws
us from the
content.
podcasts.
Yeah, I know Jared's starting to work on the World of Outlaws quite a bit.
Yeah, there's another one. So we got dirt, we've got all sorts of road racing, oval racing. Probably we might even have more if one of us finds a random series that we like.
Yeah, exactly.
We want to cover racing as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. We want to start to branch out. Like Nate said, we're not trying to just be another NASCAR podcast. That's kind of why we don't wear the sunglasses and the slamming beers during it.
I do wear the rope hats though. Like these are sick.
The rope hats are dope. We still got the vintage merch. I got an old UPS Dale Jarrett jacket on right now.
It's not jacket season down here. It's never jacket season down here.
Oh, it's almost always jacket season up here.
Yeah, I think we're going to be in a good spot in the off season because I think we'll have plenty of NASCAR documentaries. We'll have a couple F1 documentaries as watch alongs. I think we said one was probably going to be the big highlight.
Yep.
We've got we do have I'm trying to get some people on the podcast. I have not started this yet, but I will. We have a potential sports car driver from another series that we would love to get on. I don't want to give too much out because I haven't reached out yet, but if we can get him on, it'll be really cool because, if you know who I'm hinting at, he's a lot more than just a driver. Like he has an actual day job. That would be really cool. So,
yeah. And you mentioned it to us in private. Brandon Hall is another one that we would like to get on. He is going to be kind of a sister podcast to Fanfuel Motorsports next year. He runs the Scrub and Tires podcast. He does a lot of local stuff from where I'm at. He's actually going to start racing Legends next year. He races with guys like Chris Eggleston, who is a former NASCAR driver, races down at Colorado National Speedway. We're friends on Facebook, so I'm going to try to get Eggleston on. Brandon Hall is definitely on the list, so guys, check out Scrub and Tires podcast.
Oh, and guess who we have next week? We got Keith Merrick.
We got Keith Merrick next week.
That's
the diecast guy after Martinsville. I'm stoked about it. We've been trying to get him on for a while.
Like, we're going to have all sorts of things to talk about with him because he could probably write us a book on Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
Like, he's like the most, I don't know what to say. He's probably the most diehard Jimmy Johnson fan on social media.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So super stoked for Keith next week. You guys be sure to follow us on Twitter at FanfuelMSM. That's capital F, capital F, capital MSM. Also check out our website. Follow that link. It's our pinned tweet on FanFuel on Twitter. We would love to hear your submissions for content. Please be sure to fill it out. Get us some info about you. We'd love to get you on the show. Check out our website at fanfuelmotorsports.com. Got a lot of great content coming on there, and it's already on there as well. A lot of opinion articles, some super in-depth analytic articles as well. So be sure to check us out. Thank you guys for listening and for watching. Other than that, have a good one.